it's something different to tap into here to really learn your money, right?
Yeah.
Like we work hard to earn it, but how do you learn it so that you can flip it without having to walk out the house?
Welcome to this episode of the Business of Athletes podcast, where we cover the business of athletes from all angles. On this episode, we have the honor of interviewing Brandon Copeland. Brandon Copeland is a UPenn alum and professor, a vet in the NFL, and he wears so many hats. I'm not gonna even cover them all right now. Once we get into this interview, I'm gonna let him go through it because he's got so many gems and so much game to give that I'ma just let him tell you more about himself. So what's up, Brandon?
Hey, I appreciate you, man. KB, it's a pleasure, it's an honor, it's amazing to be on here and see you already dropping gems, and I am just dropping gems, trying to create something that other people can learn from as well too. You know what I'm saying? I think that it's a difference between the people that do it, and it's no shade at those, right? But like you could just tell there's a difference between the people that are doing it for, like, the glitz, glamour, fame, which is, again, nothing wrong with it, right? The money, all of that stuff, right? But also the people that kind of, your real intention here is helping a younger version of yourself. And so I'm honored to be on here, bro, and looking forward to the conversation.
Man, the honor's all mine, man. As I was saying before we started recording, like my pops used to tell me to get Kiplinger magazine and read it. He was always like one of the biggest influences in my life on money and trying to get me to learn and do different things. And so I'm looking at Kiplinger, and then I'm in college and I'm seeing Brandon Copeland is a contributor to Kiplinger magazine as an NFL player, man. First, before we get into that, man, can you just run down your background, UPenn professor, just what got you here today, and like what you've done and what you're doing now.
Yeah, man. So Brandon Copeland from Baltimore, Maryland. Originally, education was big in my household growing up. So it was always about what are you doing off the field, right? And my mom literally, you couldn't get on the field unless you had A's and B's. And then also, I was fortunate because my grandfather played in the NFL, and he played for 11 years, had a great career. And he always put me on the game about how, football. He's had 3 knee surgeries post career. He's had a bunch of different things that he's had to deal with over his entire life. But one of the things he always says is, like, they can never take your brain away from you. So I've always used football as a means to an end early, literally since high school. Been telling myself that, like, okay, how can I use this to get me to college? And then how can I use that to, obviously, if I have an opportunity to go to the league, great. But I always knew there's somebody writing these checks right now. And, we think we're making money, which is great. And again, it's a blessing. So it's not making light of the type of money that we make in these locker rooms. And I'm also speaking as an undrafted guy who, I haven't hit my AD check yet, my Aaron Rodgers bag yet, right? But more importantly, it's, again, I just understood that there's somebody out here working who doesn't have to, they do a different type of work, right? Not, I think that's the best way to say it. They don't have to necessarily wake up in the morning and go run in the heat and then do some lifting and do some push-ups and then put their body through a bunch of different things and recovery methods and techniques and hit people and all those things, right? They find a way to make money and make more money at scale, sitting at a beach or sitting, on vacation or spending time with their family. And so for me, while making all these sacrifices to play football, it was like, what else am I interested in? What else am I passionate about? And that's a long-winded way of saying, so I'm a serial entrepreneur at this point. I think that's the best way
Absolutely.
to call it, or that's what people call it. Like, I'm a boss. I want to own my own. I'm very comfortable with collaboration, but I want to create the life I want. I want my schedule. It is my schedule, right? Like, people ask me what I want to do post football, and I tell them I want to do what the I want, when the I want. Period. It's not a egotistical thing. It's just I've been sacrificing since fourth grade for this. I've been dieting, running around the house in trash bags since fourth grade for this, and so I'll be if I do all that since fourth grade to go and have to take orders from somebody else when I think I got some pretty good ideas and I want to see them come to fruition. So um, I do that through regular investing. This is the best way to say it. For my investment categories: regular investing in trading my own portfolio, in stock market and things of that nature. Alternative investor. Now I'm a big venture investor, angel investor at this point. I don't know if big is the right word, but I got a pretty substantial portfolio there. Real estate developer, used to just be investor, but now developer. Started for single family flips, and literally this morning watched our first of um, four, first of five, excuse me, multifamily uh, buildings and projects be developed. And so, literally this morning, which is why was wearing this shirt, we have a 41 unit being developed in downtown Newark, New Jersey. We just watched the excavator just start knocking that bad boy down this morning, right? And so, extremely proud. Also doing some land development now, buying up land, and then now making the Amazons, the Home Depots, the Targets of the world our tenant. And so, for me, so that's the investment side. Also big into crypto investing as well too. And then now, on the flip side of that, what I've done is, and sorry, this is a very long-winded answer,
Nah,
but
keep
that's the
going, man.
reason
Keep
why I'd
going.
be
Keep
damned
dropping them.
if I gotta be if I'm going to work for somebody else. And it's nothing wrong with that. Because shoot, in the NFL, I work for somebody else. But um, the on the flip side of that, years ago, I basically thought that, it was a little messed up that we sit all these years in school and we don't learn about the things that we really have to do in life. How to buy a house, how to buy a car, 401k, what is it? Right? Everybody talks about good debt, bad debt. Where I grew up, like, what are you talking about? Good debt. What are you talking about? Like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? So, like, we created a class years ago and we started teaching at the University of Pennsylvania called Life 101. It's literally all the things you deal with in life from a money standpoint. Let's talk about them before you actually are faced with those decisions. I shouldn't learn about buying a house or how to buy a house or what I should look for in a closing disclosure at the closing table. Well, you should learn about that in school instead of learning about the tangent of a 45-degree angle. Well, I'm not even going to say instead of. Some people are going to use that tangent of 45-degree angle, but all of us are going to need our credit
Right,
score. It's
right.
going to matter to us at some point. So for me, we started teaching that class 4 years ago. We just finished up our fourth year doing it at the University of Pennsylvania, which, just because I'm here with family, it's strategic. We're teaching it at an Ivy League school, right? Not to be elitist or anything like that, but more importantly, it was to show the world that if the University of Pennsylvania is teaching this course, why aren't you? If they're
Right.
emphasizing it, making it important, why isn't every college doing it? And then we were able, what we've tried to do and what we're actively executing on is using that flagpole as a way to trickle down the spectrum. And now we've gotten our class in the high schools, and we've been able to use production in 2022. Not the timestamp us, but you got them cameras, you got all this high production video quality. How can we use that and create materials that everyone has access to, not just the kid at Penn, but the younger version of myself in Baltimore, the younger version of my grandparents back at home in Mississippi. We got our class out to over 65,000 high school students around the country and growing, in over 70 cities. And we're just continuing to try to scale that up. Now, we're working on other products, children's books, young adult books. We built a consultancy on. We've been doing paid speaking engagements and creating partnerships and advisor partnerships and deals, consultation agreements, so that we can continue to help, for me, democratize the access to information. And so that is a long way of saying I'm a hustler, baby. I'm going to
Yes, sir,
find a
sir.
way. I'm going to make it happen. But ultimately, the reason why I started this conversation, like I said, ultimately, the things I'm doing are more about impact and legacy, because honestly, I could probably just focus on the real estate side and we go try to compete with I don't want to say compete. We don't need to compete with each other. We can go try to uh, be like and emulate the Don Peebles of the world, right? But for me, it's also more important to how can I, as J. Cole said, what good is first class if my brothers is broke? What good is first class if my friends can't sit, right? And so I want to make sure everybody has a chance to learn this information so they can put their money to work for them. And we built a business off of it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You also forgot one, man. You know I'm a.
I was
Keep
about to
going.
say,
Keep going.
and my bad. I was about to say, we got the podcast coming out. Obviously, we got to make sure that we shout that out, man. Money, music, culture. So
I was just about to say. I was just about to say. Yeah, man, you forgot one. Money, music, culture, man. I'm a fan of that, dog. Cause I'm the guy. I'm the type of cat who will listen to Jay Z and on his Reasonable Doubt, he had a line. I think it was like it's like I know this game got valleys and peaks, expectation for dips, for precipitation we stack chips, and it's like, man, for somebody to be talking like that, like we got to be able to highlight those type of bars, and that's something I know you gonna get down with and do. So I'm a fan of that as well, man. So I don't know, bro. It's just inspiring to hear you talk because you talk about talking back to a younger version of yourself sitting in Baltimore, and man, I just want to give you your flowers while you can smell them and let you know, bro, that there's a lot of us out here looking up to you, man, and watching how you move. And so you mentioned a couple things, and I kind of just want to have a conversation and cover them. So, Life 101, you said you started it 4 years ago, and you kind of already gave the background of that. But how did you kind of leverage those relationships and build that course to get that into UPenn? To have that idea and then to actually execute it. How did you do that?
Yeah, man, one hell of a question. Asking for help. I think that was the first and foremost thing. I think the class didn't really move anywhere outside of my brain um, until I asked the right people for help. And I didn't necessarily know they were the right people. I think that that's one of the concepts of Life 101. It was just how do you spark a good, comfortable place for conversations about money? And so, literally, my co-professor, who's also the ghostwriter of my book, and I'm not the one sitting behind there writing it. This dude has a gift. It's my ideas. It's my thoughts. It's my life, right? But it's ultimately, he's a wordsmith. I'm gonna let his talents speak for themselves. But um, I remember literally just happening to walk into a place on Penn's campus during our 5 year reunion, and just literally happening to be next to him and happening to have the conversation with him just about him, not asking him for any. Well, there was an ask. I was like, "Hey, man, I'll be curious to know because you've been in the faculty for a minute, but been trying to get this idea off the ground. This class, I think that everybody could use." And told him a little bit about it, and expecting them to introduce me to maybe a person or two at Penn. Not that he couldn't do it, but more of like, I just randomly walked into the building, randomly, was there for 5 year reunion stuff and saw him and just randomly sparked that conversation, right? Didn't expect us to build this type of a family relationship at this point, right? And so what he ended up doing that night was he sent me a Google Doc, which was like 4 or 5 pages long. And at the end of it, he was like, and I'm just getting started, right? Like it was one of them things of like, I'm still got some more ideas. But basically, by me just opening up and just being vulnerable, and then him just loving the idea and also having his own experiences being a bit older than myself at this point. And he went to Penn in the 90s and is there now and a mentor to people and an educator. He runs a number of different offices at the University of Pennsylvania. He saw that that was something that was lacking in his own life and his own personal journey. And so he took a real, not just a liking to it, he put energy behind it, put execution behind it. And so literally pairing with him has been the only reason why this class has been made, because he took it from an idea and a concept in my head, but he was able to bulletproof it. He was able to poke holes in it. He was able to create a syllabus, right? He was allowed, we have our language, our football language, right? You go team to team, you got your different, your one language on this team, right? The Titans, right? And then now you go to the Dolphins, it's a totally different language. Or you go to a different team, it's a totally different language. Or Steelers or wherever, right? Totally different language, right? And so he was able to, I was speaking my language when I went to meet with the faculty at Penn. He's able to put it into their language, syllabus, curriculum, why we need this, assignments, all those things, right? Which made them look at it in a totally different light and say, oh, okay, this is a tough thing to tackle because no one else has this class, blah, blah, blah. And, and we see that you guys are serious about it. And I think that that's like, us as athletes, when people come to us with investment ideas, it's like, one of the first things they tell you, all right, you got a pitch deck, right? Like you have a business proposal, because then that allows you to see if that other person is serious about their idea. And I think that that was the first start of us starting to play the school politics game in order to get our class off the ground. So linking with him, we ended up getting a lot of alumni feedback that said, "Hey, we could have used this class. Obviously, this is a new concept, right? It's not the financial education; it's a new concept. But clearly, if it was at every school, then there'd be this wouldn't be really a big deal, or what we did wouldn't really be a big deal. But we were able to get alumni that said, "Hey, I would have loved this class, or this class would have saved me money upon graduation, right? It would save me years of credit card debt and stress and mental health problems and all these different things, right?" And some prominent alums, not just the alums, unfortunately, because you got to speak their language, right? I don't care what the alums doing that is not really donating and they don't really care about, right? Like, unfortunately, I'm just going to keep it real. We always going to talk real. We care, because that's us. That's our people, right? It's not just black or brown people, but that's the people, right? But when you get the person that's writing that big old donation check to you, saying, "Yo, like, why don't we have this?" It gets the whole school to say, "Oh, maybe we give them a shot," right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
finally, after a lot of pushing and work on our end, we were able to get them to give us a shot, but not just a shot. I think that was the toughest thing. I wanted it to be credited. I didn't want people taking it. Originally, they were cool with us getting a class and having a pilot and no credit and all that stuff. But I'm like, you're not going to have kids sit through a class that doesn't give them anything towards graduation. And more importantly, this is the most important class of their lives. So that was the most amazing thing that my co-professor was able to do is one, get the class off the ground, but two, make sure that we were credited the first year out the gate, because I had so many people at the school who literally told me, like, it's going to probably take about 3 to 4 years. You got to pilot it and all that stuff. We ain't got time for that.
Right,
That's
right.
everybody else's line. We ain't got time for that.
Yeah. Nah, so you mentioned something earlier about how there were a bunch of alums who was like they said that they could have used that class and it would have saved them a lot of money um, after they left. And a lot of times I think even with cats in the league, cats with all the resources, and just people who graduate college, they think, all right, now I've got this degree, I'm making this money, I'm good. And people who look at people like that and people like us, they feel like that we just got it, we just had it all like the whole time. So let's rewind. What point in your career showed you like, okay, one, I need to learn this stuff if you didn't already know it, and then like pretty much showed you that you were lacking in the area. Like what was that young Baltimore B Cope thinking when you got your hands on that money and you ran into that first obstacle that inspired you to create this course?
Yeah, I think so two things stick out. One, um I think the most pivotal moment that told me that like, what the hell am I doing here? Was not even when I was younger. It was when we were in the league and when we had made some bucks and we had saved up some dollars and we bought our first home. This home that I'm in here in New Jersey. We bought this home. It's a townhouse here in Jersey. We originally bought it because I'm like, hey, I'm tired of paying rent somewhere. Let's buy some equity, have some ownership into this property, and then eventually we'll turn this into a rental property. Um, and so when we bought this home, I remember my wife called me. I was in Detroit with the Lions at the time, winter of 2016, and she was like, "Hey, like, does everything look right in the closing disclosures?" I had to close away because we were in season. I just came home during the bye week just to, see the house and everything like that. But closed away. They sent me the email disclosures, and I'm looking at it. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, the numbers, it all looks like it adds up. It says like this is the purchase price, but then they add these numbers here, and then this title and insurance, and this is warranty deed, and this and this and this, and okay, they're paying for the commissions and all this, but it's like it's a bunch of numbers, a bunch of language that I've never seen before in my life, and I'm signing up for. At the time, I think we took on a 15-year mortgage, right? And so I'm like, this is backwards, right? We ended up closing on a home. It's worked out for us, and again, we're still here today. But it's like that's just wrong, right? Like I know, fortunately, we making enough to potentially shake off a bad move here or there. But as a real estate investor, I've caught a number of times in those closing disclosures and closing documents, I've caught discrepancies. I've caught money where I'm like, hey, no, like you charging me an extra $1,200. Like, no, this is 240 bucks. Like, that's not my charge, that's they charge, right? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Copeland. Like, yeah, no, I know what I'm looking at now. And so it just shows to me and how many people got they say Americans, most of us I think it's like 70% of Americans or so like don't have uh, $1,000 emergency would ruin their finances right now, right? So like a $1,200 cost. I had one property I was closing on by Johns Hopkins that they tried to charge me an extra 7 grand
Mm,
and bake it
mm,
into a bunch of different costs, right? Like that's a lot of money. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
that alone, that experience alone in 2016 had me feeling like vulnerable and had me feeling anxious about the decision. I was like, this is wrong. I'm sure if I'm feeling like this with all the support and all the people I got around me, like I'm sure a lot of people in the world are feeling like this. And so that's one that really shook me up and said, hey, let me go ahead and get to work here. And I think the final thing I just to touch on growing up, I think it's more about like for me, it was just understanding that we didn't have it all, right? My mom worked extremely hard, but like at some point, watching how some parents moved and operated when I was in private school, I realized like they not working half as hard as like my mom is, like not physically working as hard as my mother is, right? And they're producing what looks like to me a bigger, better output, you know?
mm,
And so
mm,
I got to learn what you're doing, right? Like we hear, I couldn't put it into words at the time, but like I got to see how you putting your money to work for you because okay, I'm physically talented enough to go make some money, but like y'all sitting behind these Bloomberg terminals and trading millions, like, but you never sold drugs, you never hooped. Like, how'd you get it in the first place? How did that happen, right? And again, I know there's other inheritances and systemic and all those things, right? But ultimately, the craft and the talent of making money work for you, I got to learn that. And so, it never dawned on me that I'd be educating and sharing it as I go. I don't even call myself an educator. I'm just sharing as I go on my own journey. Um, but again, those are the type of experiences that made me realize, like, oh, it's something different to tap into here to really learn your money, right?
yeah,
Like we
yeah,
work hard to earn it, but how do you learn it so that you can flip it without having to walk out the house?
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, man. So you said that was 2016. So you were 3 years in at that point, two or 3 years in at that point. I mean, I think that's important for guys to hear, man, because there's a lot of guys walking around with that same anxiety, that same like, feeling, and they need to understand that even a guy like B Cope, guy like me, I got that similar story. One of my teammates, Jeremy McNichols, pretty much talked me through buying my first crib. You know what I'm saying? Like really, really explaining the ins and outs. And so just those conversations that we had, he helped ease some of my anxiety. And you having that same feeling like cats can't be afraid to ask for help and to keep seeking that knowledge because we don't have it all figured out. And there's more aspects to the game that can make us get even bigger and better outcomes.
Yeah, yeah, and you different in a great way, right? Like you're not afraid to say, "Yo, I don't know this," right? Like, and I think that the league, the beautiful thing about the league is it's changing where like when I came in the league, like I couldn't say I was doing all this stuff off the field, especially as an undrafted guy. You know what I'm saying? Like there
Yeah,
was a certain point in
yeah,
time where it was like you shut the hell up about what you're doing off the field. And now through a, for a number of reasons, right? The league has to be a little more comfortable and accepting of guys talking and sharing about what they do. And some teams and some organizations don't like it. Some organizations are comfortable with it, right? As long as you get your job done and your work done, which is beautiful. But
yeah,
again, I think
yeah,
that, a lot of guys also come into the league with the ego and it's like, I'm never wrong, blah, blah. But look, again, you're different in a great way. And it's not saying that there there are a lot of guys like us in the league that,
yeah,
people
yeah,
might not know about. But I hope that more of us are like you, like myself, where it's like, yo, like we learning this thing together. Nobody ever taught us this. Let's talk it through because I would have loved to have a OG, triple OG that would have literally walked me through the first time they bought a house. And I'm sure
Yeah,
you're gonna do it for
yeah.
somebody years from now.
Man, I definitely hope I get the opportunity, and that means a lot coming from you, man. Because like I said, I've been watching your story, watching you, reading your Kiplinger articles, using your life one-on-one budgeting tools for a minute, man. So let's shift gears for a second, man. You mentioned that you do some consulting, like some media and branding consulting, and that's through your one of your many hats that you put on with Cascade Advisory Group, man. Can you talk to us about that and what made you get into that space of media, branding, and consulting, in the creative space like that?
Yeah, I think, being undrafted and having the opportunity, once we started teaching the course, we literally had every publication reach out and want to do a story or something, which was awesome. And so, you can either shy away from it or you can dive in. And fortunately, I think, smart enough at the time to dive in. And from there, we started getting people saying, hey, we want you to speak and we'll pay you to come here and do this and pay you to come speak and pay you to do this. And then we also started getting people to come and say, hey, we'll pay you to post this on your social media feed, or we'll pay you to do a shoot and blah, blah, blah. And then you post one or two of the things from your social media feed, but we'll take the content and we'll do something else with it. Great. What really, really, what really spawned the next step was, again, always asking questions, always listening, opening up your eyes. Jay Z, we had talked about earlier, like, he mentioned it recently, I think, in the conversation he had with Kevin Hart. But there was a shoot I did when I was with the Jets, and I remember it was like a 4 hour shoot. It was paid me ten grand to do it, and for me at the time, that was like that was historic for us, and I always, kind of try to set a new floor. And the thing with that shoot was, so they came to my crib. I remember we did a pre-production call, all those things, and they had some ideas, but like ultimately, we ended up doing all of my ideas. I ended up scheduling everybody. My brother and I ended up scheduling everybody that had to come through the crib and be a part of it and all those things. And again, during it, my brother, I know there was a time when my brother leaned over to my mom and said, "It's crazy that years ago this dude was begging to be on the team, and right now he's getting paid 10 grand to get a haircut on camera and talk about what he's going to do." Right? Like, it was just like a good moment for us as a family in terms of like, wow, look how far we've come. But there was a time we had a bunch of videographers, camera people in the crib, and I end up like knowing about half of them because they would be freelancers with the Jets. And so I was just thinking, which was cool. It was awesome seeing those people in my crib, but I was going to see them at training camp practice the next day. And so I'm like, on the drive back to the hotel, because this was just an off day during training camp. Excuse me. On the drive back to the hotel, I remember just thinking, it was like a 40-minute drive, and I'm just like, man, so if I made 10, how much did everybody else make? How much did the producer make? How much did this person make? How much did the camera people make? Right? I didn't know these numbers or these answers, but I'm like, I kind of planned the whole thing. I could have set those people up. They probably could have brought their friends. Like, we could have done that whole thing ourselves and then pitched it right to the sponsor. Right? And so that is what originally got my wheels turning of like, okay, how do
Mm,
I move past the
mm,
talent, right? And where I'm getting paid the check and happy to be there, right? Which is fine in certain situations and it's simpler, honestly. But how do I move past the talent? Because I know in production, there's sometimes where, that might have been a $120,000 budget, and I might have got 10, thinking I'm happy. But really, if I do it myself, or if my team can do it, then I can pay the camera people more. I can pay the producers more. I can pay everybody more, or we can keep more, right? But ultimately, it's our decision, and so that is the, just giving me real life, right? Like that is the impetus of like okay, there's more here. And so from there, we created a production company so we can start to shoot our things in house. We can hire the freelancers, we can hire the photographers. We just did a shoot in LA recently with the podcast. But then the next level step was, how do I move beyond, this marketing thing, holding up someone else's product and smiling and saying, well, listen, you're the big company and the big business that's coming to me, telling me what I should be doing with your product, but I'm going to tell you, you're trying to get to my audience. I think if you really want to get to my audience, we need to open it, we need to turn it this way, and we need to just not even sell, or we need to do it this way, right? And so now we're taking on more of an advisor role, which means more retained money, it means larger checks, more retained money, and also it's not me always having to recruit the money. And so for us as a business, the way Cascade came about was again just me listening, learning, and ultimately wanting to evolve so that we don't have to work as hard, but we can have a bigger or larger impact. And when I say don't have to work as hard, it's still hard work. We're putting together decks, we're putting together research, presentations, all those things, right? We're doing different work, but we'll have a chance to impact more people because now I'm in the rooms with the people making the decisions about the campaigns. I'm helping you figure out, hey, this is not where I think that those dollars should be put. Like I think we should be putting it over here because it's actually going to directly impact the communities that we needed to impact. So for me, it was like, how do we have more control over what not just we're doing, but also what this company is doing? Because sometimes, again, it's no offense to anybody at those companies, not the companies I work with, because clearly they got me in the room, right? But sometimes, as we know, right, like how how you gonna tell us how to be us, right? Like you got nobody in the room that looks like us. How you gonna tell me how to be me? How you gonna tell me what works for me and the younger version of me better than us? And so a lot of times it's somebody telling us what we should do and what they think will attract our audience. When I'm telling you, no, I'm telling you what will work, but also I'm gonna tell you beyond that, like what we can do to follow up on that and have a bigger impact. So yeah.
Man, so many gems right there. I feel like I was just sitting there soaking it up. That's not even for the audience. That's for me right there. I'm trying to learn from that, man. But you mentioned, man, but you mentioned being at the table and having your finger on the pulse of the culture. And so you mentioned your podcast, Money Music Culture. So let's get into that. What brings that up, and why the combination of those
Yeah,
three
yeah.
things?
So, money, music, culture was just a combination of like a couple of passions of mine. Money, right? Music. I love music. Like, literally, that's what drives me throughout a day. Wake up in the morning, put on a certain song. You know what I'm saying? Put on certain things, right? Before the game, we know how big music is in terms of our energy, our spirit, and so it's tied to a lot of things I do personally, but. I can't tell you how many times I was on the drive with my wife, road trip, and I'm sitting there like, you hear what he said? Like, rewind that. He said, and wifey probably like annoyed as hell. But for me, it's like, I could do it all day, right? Like, I actually listen to lyrics. I want to hear what you're saying. And so, money, music, culture ultimately is obviously is for the culture, it's for us. And money music culture basically is an idea of how do we edutain people, how do we teach people about money in a way that they've never been taught about it before. And so we've had to tweak and work the idea, experiment with some different things, but extremely excited because this is a it's going to be a dope experience, bringing people into the conversation that otherwise may not have been attracted to it, because ultimately I think the universal language is music, right? You can
Absolutely.
put some
Yeah.
Beyonce or
Absolutely.
some Drake on right now, and they playing that joint in Greece right now and overseas and all over the country, right? Uh, Regardless of race, skin, all of those things. And so I think that, like, if I can get you nodding your head to Migos, but I can say, yo, like, you remember when Migos said this, or you ran off on the plug twice. Okay, well, you ran off on the plug twice. Yeah, we can all do that, and I'm with you. But that's also like credit. And did you know the five things that make up your credit score? And now we can build on that conversation, right? And we can talk about how Jay-Z talks about y'all want to run off on the plug. Nah, like that's not the way to move, right? So again, it's like how do we just have a conversation through our lenses as the culture, but also just about things that I genuinely love. My co-host Ross Mack and I genuinely love.
Man, that's huge because I listened to a cat named Wall Street Trapper. I'm sure you probably seen him, but he makes a lot of references to streets, to music, to the trap, and like when you think about it, like athletes want to be rappers and rappers want to be athletes. You see all the rappers playing in these basketball leagues and stuff like that, and it's just a lot of crossover. There's a lot of different principles that go from music to sports and then just into the culture period, like into business period. So I think that's a really unique way to do it, man, because there's a lot of free game given out, especially by a lot of the ones who've done it and have had some staying power, like Rick Ross, Jay-Z. You know what I'm saying? People who are really hustlers, really business savvy individuals, man. So I think that's I'm look, I listen, I think you had one, you put some episodes up and I can't remember which one I watched, but I listened to it on the plane. I downloaded it and kind of tapped in, but I'm definitely gonna be tapped into to what you got coming, bro. And I wanted to ask one more question and just kind of let you flow on this one, man, because we're talking to young athletes. We're talking to the younger versions of ourselves. So I'd be remiss if we didn't think about college athletes and the situation that they're now in with NIL. So you talked about partnering with brands and different ways that you manage your relationships with these brands. What would be your number one piece of advice to a college athlete that's looking to monetize, that's looking to benefit from NIL? Yeah,
One, something I always tell my students is understand that you have a platform. And I think that, sometimes you can get caught in any situation, but we'll speak athletes specifically since we're talking NIL, right? But you can get caught in the locker room and think that because your face isn't on the billboard, you don't have a platform. Nobody wants to hear from you. And so I think one, understand that you have a platform is the first key, right? Not counting yourself out of the money. Because if that was the case, we would have never counted, we'd have never dreamed this, right? Two, then start to think about the things you're passionate about. I think that there's a phase where, and I'm also just kind of talking about how I've built my thing, right? Like there's a phase where it's about just capturing some dollars, right? Like, look, we're a hungry college student. Like, it is what it is. Like, do I need to go and show up and, sign autographs at this random, memorabilia store? Am I in love with memorabilia? No, right? But I'm going to get that money because I'm not always going to be able to get paid to show up and sign autographs. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget. Unless you're a Hall of Famer, right? Like, you're not always going to be able to show up and get paid to sign autographs or to
yeah,
just be you and be yourself, right? Um, and so in that second note, it's like, as you're saying yes to things and taking on different deals to make money, and not all money is good money. We go ahead, disclaimer right there, right? But taking on deals to make money, you start to like take notes in your head, like, did I like that experience? Was that fun, right? So that you can continue to craft the experience that you want, right? So for me, with social media, I don't like it. Like, it's not that I'm a social media hater, but like, I don't personally like doing this and yo, look what I'm doing and blah 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 and see this and boom boom, yes yes yeah yeah yeah. Like, I just don't. It doesn't make me feel good because I almost feel like I'm bragging on my people as opposed to me just like, yo, this what we doing, and I hope the people who really know me, like, that I'm trying to put you on game because if I can do it, you can do it too, type of thing, right? And so for me, over time, it's like as you continue to say yes to things, you're also using those as opportunities to gain experience and figure out what you actually like, right? Um, Once you've done that, right? And then this is obviously in a microscope because by the time you figure that out, you might have already graduated college, and whether you're going to the league or not, it might be, a wrap for you. But more importantly, it's all really good experience in terms of building a business and having an entrepreneurship mindset. So it's understanding your platform. It's two, figuring out and refining your passion. And then three, monetizing your passion, right? So what I try to do is I look at all, not all, I look at some of the more common ways that things are being monetized around me, and then if you're the big time person on the team, right? You go shoot, let me go copy paste and let me use them as a comparable sale. Those are comparable numbers, and let me go charge a little bit more for inflation because I'm the next best, whatever, right? When you're not the big time person, you got to get creative, right? So, like for example, years ago there was a Super Bowl experience, and obviously all the big time players showing up to go be at this sponsorship party and this major bank party and this major this party, right? Well, this is a Super Bowl. I'm sure the local banks might want somebody to come through, or the local grocery store might want somebody to come through. So hey, I have my marketing rep. Let's reach out to some of the local people in the area. People we know can cut a check, but they not about to get Odell to come through their spot. Right? Like, but they still got 5, 10, 20 bands that they want to market with, and they still would like to have an NFL player come in because it still is an amazing experience for their customer base. But nobody's looking there. So let me go be great there, right? And so that's an example though of how to monetize, right? Like it's figuring out how to tell your story, figuring out your elevator pitch, figuring out what you're good at. One of the worst things, one of the things that is tough about what I do is like there's so many different things. So you almost have to pare down what you're saying to whomever you're talking to, because if you tell them everything, they're like, oh, you're confused, or they get a little confused. How can we use them and this and that, right? And so it's figuring out your pitch, it's honing in on those things, and then it's monetizing. And if it's not a clear cut situation, it's being willing to get creative to monetize yourself and maximize your opportunity.
Man, man. Just to finish up, man. Where can everybody find you if they want to partner with you with Cascade Advisory Group and be a part of Life 101? Where can they find you?
Yeah, BrandonCopeland.com. Simple. BrandonCopeland.com. We got a contact page. We got a book page. And then on social media, bcope51. Any, serious inquiries, I ain't gonna lie to you. I would just say go to BrandonCopeland.com. I don't really check DMs and stuff like that. I'm married. You know what I'm saying? Like that
Word, word,
ain't nothing
word,
in there
word.
for
I'm
me.
with you.
But yeah, BrandonCopeland.com is simple, and the team will definitely be in contact with anybody who's serious about that work.
Man, I appreciate you for this conversation, dog. If you had told senior year me that I'm having a conversation about, Brandon and finances and all type of things with Brandon Copeland, I would have thought you was crazy. So it's really an honor for me to just be talking to you and having this conversation and getting the opportunity to bring your wisdom to a platform and helping other people learn from you as much as I've learned from you. So I appreciate you, dog, and I'll see you next time, bro.